Thank you, Justin. I'll hear the accent later. I'm very excited. I'm very nervous to be up here. It's a really great turnout. I'm very excited. We have 21 years. A lot of... I saw a lot of people here tonight that I hadn't seen in a while, and it's very exciting. You know, when we started this group, there was, I would say, about 15 or 20 of us, and we had a great foundation in the Mamaroneck group, and then we wanted to sort of, fine-tune our group. So we started the Harbor Island group. We were all very nervous about it, but it's worked out great. You know, God watches over alcoholics. And I did want to say a special hello to Carolyn here tonight. She's always been a big help for all our group anniversaries, and she didn't get mentioned tonight. So there you are, honey. And I was thinking of one thing, how AA works. You know, I was 12-step by Billy O. And we were fortunate enough to be sober with his father in the Mamaroneck group for years, and how much he helped me. And this is how AA works. I'm not a perfect person in any way, but I've stayed sober, and I try to help other alcoholics. And I think that's all I can really hope for at the end of the day. I'm not gonna be struck perfect, but I can be useful. And Ray was very useful, and the people that are active in the meetings are very useful. And I think when it's all said and done for me, if I can, live my life trying to be useful and sober, that's a very good life. And thinking of that, I just wanted to say, is there anyone in the room that would just raise your hand if you have under a year sobriety, so we can see who you are? See, that's beautiful. You're going to hear a great speaker tonight. I've been pumping him up ever since I heard him in November. I hope I didn't overdo it, but I think I did. He's got a great message, and he's from Sobriety and Beyond, and is Paul M.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul, and I'm an alcoholic. And it's truly only by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous that I didn't find it necessary to drink any booze today, and I'm eternally grateful. It's good to be here and good to be sober. I want to thank Peter for that wonderful introduction. That's one of the nice things about being sober. You're introduced rather than explained, Like back in the day, it's like, don't look now, there's a guy over there, and whatever you do, don't loan him any money, and don't buy him any drink, You've taken a dip in the social ranking when you start to be referred to as it, It's here, when's it leaving, But it's a privilege to be asked to speak at any meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's indeed an honor to be asked to speak here tonight, albeit at the Ethical Center. When I first heard that name, I'm saying, I hope they don't do a background check on me. Better get somebody else to speak, It's almost an oxymoron having an AA meeting at an ethical center, Now, you look like an honest bunch, Hope I remember to lock my car, No, I tell you're a classy bunch because you stayed around after the food was over, I mean, that's evidenced. But it's good to be here and it's good to be sober. And to the newcomers here tonight, I'd like to welcome you. I want to welcome you to the greatest fellowship in the face of this earth. And there's probably a positive progression that we have to ask who the newcomers are. I have a sponsor, and he's been sober for a long, long, long time. I think he's been sober forever, And I think he came into the fellowship a couple of years before Bill Wilson. And he says to me, I remember you didn't have to ask who the newcomers were. You knew who they were. They were sitting in the back row with their clothes in a bag, maybe a black eye from being in a bar fight. And that was just the women. The men looked even worse, And I'm like, all right, yeah. But I said, if you're a newcomer here tonight, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And you probably haven't been made welcome too many places lately, but you're welcome here. Because I believe Alcoholics Anonymous, it's almost like a backwater pond. And if it doesn't get fresh water, nothing will grow in it. And it'll become stagnant. And you're the fresh water that we need in Alcoholics Anonymous to remind us it's not getting any better out there. You know, one day. And if you are new to Alcoholics Anonymous, I said, this is the greatest fellowship in the face of this earth, bar none. And not only is it a fellowship, it's designed for living. Our program works under all conditions where you won't have to drink again no matter what, albeit as a day at a time. It's a cinch by the inch and it's hard by the yard, and we do it one day at a time. I'm not here to sell Alcoholics Anonymous. This thing sells itself. It's a program of attraction, not promotion. But I'll tell you something. As far down as you go with drink, you can come back up and end some on Alcoholics Anonymous. That's been my experience. You know, drinking's progressive, but sobriety's progressive too. And you might be sitting out there saying, Paul, that's okay for you. You've been sober for a while. You don't know the pain I'm in. You don't know the chaos I've created. Well, maybe our stories are not identical. Maybe they're not even similar. But I'll tell you something from my experience. And in this, I would only talk from my experience. You hear, we're up here in the woods here tonight. You've heard that analogy. You walk 20 miles into the forest, you have to walk 20 miles out. Well, I like to look at it from a different angle. I don't care how dark and how deep and how painful that forest is that you're in right now. Let me tell you, I believe you're just 12 steps away from the path to new life. That's all. Just 12 steps away from the path to a new life. You know, and the flip side of that is, if you're an old-timer, I want to thank you for keeping that door open. Because guys like me usually die drunk on the street somewhere, far from friends and family and loved ones. And it's never pretty and it's not good. You know, one day. And as importantly, if you're sitting out here tonight, and maybe you're like I was at one time, and you're off drink for a while, and you're saying to yourself, is this it? And you're being nudged out that door by the twin killers of the alcoholic. Resentment and self-pity. And you don't even know you're being pushed out the door. And you're doing one judgment, one resentment at a time. Well, I hope I can say something here tonight that'll make you do what I had to do. Exchange dry time for sober time. And get all the blessings and benefits that our sober life has to offer in Alcoholics Anonymous. So if we can do that, and I can tell you a little bit about how it was and what happened and how it is today. Got a lot of ground to cover, but I think by about 10:30, 11:15, we should wrap it up. Sean, now might be a good time to put any knives away, any carving knives, you know. I want to see anybody hurt themselves, or even worse, hurt me. But, okay, how it was. Well, as you can probably figure out, I'm not from the neighbourhood. It's been well over 20 years now since I left my native Cuba. And, you know, all joking aside, you know, I'm from Ireland, the north of Ireland, and the sort of neighbourhood I came from, if you didn't drink, you moved. Everybody drank. I didn't know anybody that didn't drink. In fact, I got a little annoyed when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm like, the whole neighbourhood was a bunch of fall-down drunks. Why do I have to carry the cross for everybody, you know? But, and I used to get a lot of mental gymnastics when I first came here. Why did I become an alcoholic? When did I become an alcoholic? What came first? The allergy, the obsession? What about the neurosis? Was I culturally challenged? You know, because I'm Irish? Have I got a genetic predisposition? All a bunch of nonsense. The only thing I have to do is accept the fact that I am an alcoholic. Now, if my mother was here now, she would tell you that I had a lot of the traits of this disease long before I ever took drink. Now, if I was to speculate, I would say that in my case, and I don't think there's one rubric that fits all alcoholics. Like, we're not cookie cutter. There's not one profile. Our stories wash over each other. That's just the way we are. But if I was to speculate, I would say in my case it was a case of alcohol in a bottle and alcoholism in a person. As I said, even before I took drink, I was irritable, discontent. I had that stone in the shoe feeling. When I was over there, I wanted to be over here. When I was upstairs, I wanted to be downstairs. If you asked me what was wrong, I couldn't have told you. But something wasn't just right. I could never put my finger on it. Real alky stuff, all below the radar, other side of the horizon. Just, you know, I'm not sure what's going on, but it's just not right. See, long before I took drink, the search was on. I mean, it's been said that alcoholism is a form of spiritual thirst. It's not a very elevated form, but it's a form nonetheless. I mean, Carl Jung said that to Bill Wilson. It's amazing, and I'm paraphrasing the word spirit for the highest human experience and the lowest form of depravity. So the search was on. There was a yearning, there was a need, there was a want, there was a desire. For whatever reason I don't know, and God's not telling me, I ended up with a hole in my soul. And I tried to fill it with booze and people and places and things. And every victory that I had before I came here was purely symbolic. This is the real deal. So the search was on. I mean, I didn't realize that I suffered, as Bill Wilson says, from anxious apartness. I didn't realize I had that. But I took that drink that night, and with these older guys, that's almost spiritual in itself. We're sitting down there, we're drinking. And I took that drink. That booze filled all the holes. It took all the rough edges off. I could be everything I thought you wanted me to be. And for a chronic people-pleasing alcoholic, there was nothing better. It was a magic elixir. It was a potion. And that night I made a deal, a Faustian bargain. I made a deal with the devil. Because at that moment in time I said to myself, this is the way to go. I'll not be without this stuff. And at a visceral level that I can't even discern or describe to this day, I said to myself, this is the way to go. And either consciously or subconsciously, I hitched my wagon to a star called alcohol, and it was giddy up all the way to the precipice. I mean, you've heard, I'm not the first person to say this, it was like my life went from black and white to colour, just like that. I didn't know that I was apart from, but I felt a part of, I felt unified, it felt together. I said to myself, this is the way to go. If you'd have told me that night where I would end up 15 years later, I said it can't happen. No way. But the progression of this disease in my life was astonishing. See, I didn't realize that I drank for a reason. I drank because alcohol was a suitable treatment for the disease called alcoholism. It worked. It worked like a charm. But the catch-22 for us alcoholics is the solution we find alcohol becomes worse than the original problem, alcoholism. And then we end up between a rock and a hard place. Our book calls it the jumping off place. I couldn't live with drink, and I couldn't live without drink. But you couldn't tell me that at 15 or 16. I was getting away with it, and things were good. But within 6 months, I'm getting my stomach pumped out of hospitals. Before I'm out of my teens, I'm a daily drinker. Before I'm out of my teens, I'm taking morning drink. And there's people love me. There's people reached out to me. I don't want to hear it. I'm thinking booze is the solution. You're the problem. He's the problem. This is the way to go. And the more raw and the more untreated my alcoholism will become, the more this will become the solution. And that would lead me to defend and justify and rationalize pretty much every drink I took close to the end. And people reached out to me, my mother, my father, and I'd be thinking to myself, I'm not the problem. Alcohol is not the problem. Me and alcohol together is certainly not the problem. But my life was unraveling around me. And I'm sitting there, and we look back on it. Like Bill Wilson talked about at Winchester Cathedral. There was moments. I'm sure there was caution signs along the way, a whisper in the ear from the power above. I just blew right through it. I got both hands on the wheel in a death grip, and I don't even know it. I'm from Northern Ireland, and this is the height of the Troubles. I'm thinking to myself, I'm a working class Catholic from the wrong side of the tracks. I got a big chip on my shoulder. Even better than that, a guy said to me one time, Paul, you're a well-balanced guy. And I'm thinking to myself, finally somebody that knows what they're talking about, He says, you got a chip on both shoulders, I hated everything, I hated everybody, but I was becoming to despise the man in the glass. And I'm sitting there, but I'm a finger pointer. I'm into the blame game. It's never me, it's you, it's him, it's that, it's this. And I'm sitting in a bar with only the arrogance that an alcoholic can summon up. And I'm thinking to myself, this country Northern Ireland really sucks. There's a place like America, and there's a place a guy like me could really make his move, And I come home and I said to my father, I burst in the door half drunk, and I said, I'm going to America, And don't try and talk me out of it. He says, talk you out of it. I'll help you pack when you're leaving. On you go, Columbus. Let me give you some fatherly advice. Turn left at Greenland, you know. I'm like, I'll show them, you know. And like driftwood, I washed up in Rockaway Beach, New York. Nobody drinks in Rockaway, right? You tell people from Rockaway, they go, oh, Rockaway, the Irish Riviera, you know. It should have been called Cirrhosis by the Sea, you know. But it's so true of the alcoholic. I mean, I got that built-in GPS system. You could have blindfolded me and put me in a sack. I'm going to find a neighborhood that drinks as much, if not more, than the one I just left. And here I'm going to make my big move here, and much to my chagrin, I realized that Fortune 500 companies, for some obscure reason, don't do a lot of recruiting under the boardwalk in Rockaway. You know, I don't know why. They got some, maybe the sound gets on their resumes or something, I don't know, you know. But they usually start off in Ivy League colleges and work their way out, you know. But so I had to go to Plan B, and Plan B was I became a bartender. Now you might say to yourself, who in their right mind would hire somebody that's never been a bartender before, that's literally just off the boat? Well, I'll tell you the type of bar that did that. You know, in every neighborhood there's that one bar, and you say to yourself, when you're sober, you say, I would never be seen dead in that place. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're sitting in there, you know, it's not so bad in here, right? You know. Well, that's the sort of bar I got a job in. I mean, this was the craziest bar you want. I mean, let me just sum it up this way. It was the sort of bar you got thrown into rather than out of, you know. I mean, this bar had it all. Alcoholics, drug addicts, degenerate gamblers. And that was just the staff. That wasn't even the customers, you know. I mean, it was one of those tough bars. You know those neighborhood bars? The sort of bar where the men are all men, and unfortunately most of the women were too, you know. But I'll just end it in this, you know. If you want to see a full set of teeth, you needed 32 customers in the bar. Let me just leave it at that, you know. You know. Now that I've ruined any spiritual credibility that I had, I shall move on. But let me tell you something. Water finds its own level, and so do alcoholics, and I fit it in there like a glove. You know, and this disease is cunning, it's baffling, and it's powerful. But above all, it's patient. If you be alcoholic, it'll get you, and it got me but good. You know, and I've experienced every form of drink. I'm not going to bore you with that. I was a weekend drinker, a daily drinker, morning drinking, binge drinking. The drinking had done me in. I became a periodic alcoholic. And the drunks, you know the alcoholic equation, the drunks got longer in duration and the period between them got shorter. And that's when things were really, the wheels were starting to come off the wagon. See, for a long period of my life, I defended my drinking. You know, I drink the way that I drink, and you drink the way that you drink, and I reached a point in my life I was trying to curb my drinking. I was trying to get a handle on it, and I realized I couldn't. You know, I realized that my drinking was out of control. I'm starting to have convulsions from coming off drink. I'm having seizures. I'm going on these round-the-clock drunks. Coming off them is worse than staying on them. It just becomes horrendous. And this got worse. And then I reached that point in my life where I really wanted to stop drinking. And like this would have been a perfect opportunity. I'll stop for Lent. I'll stop for this. I'm taking oaths. I'm making proclamations. I'm swearing on your life. I'm swearing on my life. And I drink again. And I drink again. And I drink again. And our book says the alcoholic is a bewildered one. Nobody was any more confused than me. I remember reading one time that Dr. Bob said he felt weak as a person because he feels so miserably at something he wanted to do so well, which was not drink. And boy, can I identify with that. I was so glad to find out that the alcoholic can have willpower in other areas, but when it comes to alcohol, I just go blank. There's a blind spot comes over. And I forget all the pain and the misery and the trouble of the previous drinking, and I go in the epitaph of the alcoholic. This time it's going to be different. It was her, it was this, it was them. I'll get it right this time. And it was worse. It was worse. It was always worse. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I'll just sum it up with one vignette. I remember one time I was on a bad drunk. I was drinking for 2 or 3 weeks. I collapsed in a bar in alcoholic convulsions. I woke up in Peninsula Hospital, strapped in a restraining sheet. And they filled me up full of something, Librium, whatever, to get me off the ceiling. And I'm lying there, and I'm as beaten as I have ever been from drink. There was other times I drank more, but this time I had cleaned my clock. And the woman who's my wife today was standing at the side of the gurney. And Dr. Bob also said we're blessed with great women, and that's been my experience. I took this good girl from a nice family, never exposed to alcoholism, and I dragged her down this dark corridor of the last years of my drinking. And thankfully, we're a happy couple together, and it's just thankfully to Alcoholics Anonymous. But she was standing at the bedside, and I wasn't trying to be cinematic, but I reached out through the gurney, the handle, and I took her hand, and I says, "This time it's over. I don't know why I can't drink, but I can't drink, and I will never, ever drink again." And I meant that with every ounce, every enzyme of conviction that I could muster at that moment. And I came out of hospital a few days later, and she was nervous, and I was nervous. And I was having thoughts of drink, but I said to myself, surely to God, if I just hang in there, they're bound to dissipate. And a week went by, and I'm starting to eat again. I'm starting to feel a bit better. And 2 weeks go by, and we're starting to do things like a couple again. And 3 weeks go by, and we're going into the city, and we're going to movies, and we're going to shows. And I remember saying to me, remember you told me you used to like to read, and I started reading books again for the first time in years. 5 weeks go by, and I started going to the gym and swimming and going to the steam room, and I'm feeling good about myself. And then I'm drunk again. How do you explain that to somebody who's a non-alcoholic? I can't explain it. And you see that look, and we all know that look of perpetual disappointment. How could you, Paul? You promised. You lay in that hospital, you put your hand on your heart. You said this time, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I've got to get away from you because I'm going to end up in an asylum. And where do I go? Well, I'll tell you where I go. I go to barroom mentality. I don't need you. I don't need nobody. And the complete opposite is true. I thought I'm finished. Where do I go from that? And I would like to tell you that I got my lips burnt a few more times and came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I drank for another 3 or 4 years after that. Booze booze will give you something, man. The Merchant of Venice, Shylock just wanted a pound of flesh, not this disease. When it comes back, it gave me stuff at the start. But as our book says, it's a herbaceous creditor. As Bill Wilson says, booze boomeranged on him. And when it came back for payday, when it came back I had to pay the freight, it'll take your job, your car, your wife, the shirt off your back. But what it really wants is me, 6 foot under. Because of all terminal diseases, this is the most terminal. If I don't stop drinking, drinking's going to stop me. And that's not some theory I have. I'm not around here a lifetime, but I'm around here long enough to know what happens if you take your eye off the ball. This disease will kill you stone dead. And here I am. I'm getting into the ring, me against alcohol every time. I'm getting knocked out before the first round's over. I'm putting the gloves on, telling myself, how can I do it different this time? And the result's always the same. I'm lying flat on my back, looking up at the lights, going, what happened this time? And this happened over and over again. Joe Martin said, I heard him one night, he said, a 5-year-old could say, don't get in the ring. But don't get in the ring means don't take a drink. And I don't know how not to take a drink. Oh, I can stop drinking, but my life doesn't get better when I stop drinking. My life gets worse. See, that's the problem. An alcohol problem is solved by not drinking alcohol. Our book talks about that. It gives a couple of examples. You have a health issue or a romance issue, you just stop and they stay stopped. Not me. I stop. A week goes by, the stone's back in the shoe, the knots in the stomach. It feels like everybody's on my case, even if they're not. And we hear all the time, this disease, it's just like, I'm like the mythical King Canute. I'm sitting there telling the tide not to come in, and this alcoholism just keeps coming day after day after day. And there's not a damn thing I can do about it. Because I'm going toe-to-toe with alcohol. And up until this moment in time, I have never beaten an obsession to drink. It's only what we do together, what I can't do alone. And I'm getting beat down time after time after time. You hear all the meetings all the time. I never walked into a bar yet and said, you know what? Let me get a shot in a beer. I want to drink myself into a restraining sheet, I never did that. I just want to get a half a dozen drinks just to get the edge off. Everybody's on my case. Let me get a drink. Finally take that drink. Oh, open my top button. Okay, yes. But you say, I'm an alcoholic. I can't have one drink. One drink creates a thirst I can't quench. My life's unmanageable, drunk or sober. And I got, as I said, both hands on the wheel in a death grip. You know? One drink creates a thirst I can't quench. You know? One's too many and 1,000's not enough. And this happens over and over again. And here at a time at meetings here, you still hear to this day, people trying to go toe to toe. And then they wake up, we call it the broken shoelace. You just say, what's the use? And you take the first drink again. And this happened over and over again. My last drunk was my worst. I've been drinking for about 3 weeks round the clock. And this is where I ended up. I ended up in the loneliest place on earth for an alcoholic. I'm sitting in my apartment drinking round the clock against my own will. Knowing loneliness and only an alcoholic can know. The thoughts of life with drink terrified me, and the thoughts of life without drink terrified me. And everything's gone, and everybody's gone. I remember looking out the window because I lived at Rockaway Beach, and I'm thinking my family's 3,000 miles away. I'll never see them again. If you asked me why, I couldn't have told you. I could have told you why going in, but I can't tell you why coming out. The dots don't connect. Whatever good time I was drinking to make better, or whatever bad time I was drinking to get away from, it pales in comparison to the absolute chaos that I've created now. And I reached that point, and we've all reached that point, when you realize, and you're sitting there, and you realize deep down, in your innermost self, that you have backed the wrong horse. I invested everything in booze. I pushed family, friends, loved ones away for drink. And here I am, high and dry. I don't know what day John Barleycorn actually left town, but I tell you, when he left town, that's a lonely day. Bill Wilson says loneliness just settled in on like a vapor. Oh boy, could I identify with that. Bill Wilson sums up the end of this disease as better if I ever heard it in half a dozen words. He says quicksand stretched all around him. Jesus Christ, there's not a better statement for alcoholism. And that's just the way I went. And we've all been in that position. No matter which way I turn, there's nowhere to go. Nobody wants to hear it. They've all heard it before. Yeah. Tell you your story walking. We've heard it already. You know what? Keep going. You know? We all have our miracle stories, and here's mine. That woman who's my wife today was at work. Here's how God works in your life. See, that's my problem. I could never see the hand, the loving hand of God in the thorns of my day, even when I was drinking. But you know, grace, there has to be some extension on my part. I'm sitting in that house, and she's at work, and she just burst out crying. And this woman who had just started with the company says, why is that woman crying? And the other girl says, she's got this on again, off again boyfriend. He's a bad drinker, and they're talking about breaking the door down to the apartment. They don't know if he's alive or dead, and it's just a whole bad scene. And she says, my father's got this friend who's in this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. You want me to get his number? Woman says, can't do no harm. So she got this number of a guy, Jerry C. from the Bronx, from the old Sobriety Unlimited group. And she put that number, she came down and wrote on a piece of paper what I've been hearing since I was 15. Paul, you're a nice guy, but you drink too much. And I had a guy's telephone number on it. And I was just amazed. I seen the thing coming under the door, and I picked it up, tears rolling down my face. And I picked up the phone and I called a complete stranger. And he had been primed that I might call. And he says, Paul, I said, I can't stop drinking. I can't stop drinking. He says, you can't stop drinking because you're an alcoholic. And immediately I'm thinking to myself, maybe my brogue's throwing you off. I didn't say I was an alcoholic. I just said I can't stop drinking, I'm getting like lost in translation here, The pride and the ego of the alcoholic knows no limits, let's face it. I'm literally laying in the gutter looking down on people, Do you know who I am? No, we don't know who you are, Well, I know who you are, But he said a very strange thing. It's not strange, it's almost spiritual. It is spiritual. He says, Paul, do you believe in God? Now, I grew up in Northern Ireland. I grew up in a time and a place where people literally shot each other outside their front door over religion. I remember when I was 8 or 9 years of age and I heard this rat-tat-tat-tat. Like, what's that noise? I look out, there's two guys lying dead outside the front door. And I realized that the war wasn't on the TV, it was actually outside the door. I'm not saying that was a seminal moment in my life. I like to say, think that when I parted ways from God, it wasn't that sort of Charlton Heston moment. I wasn't standing on top of the mountain with the thunder and the lightning. It was all very subtle. That's how the lower power works in my life. It's like a plane flying. It doesn't have to go way off course, just 1 degree, that's all. And long enough, it's completely off course. And that's the way it was with me. It was like, Sunday morning was that way, and Saturday night's over here, and the lower power's like, never mind all that, let's go over here. And there's lots of people go down that Saturday night road as a youthful excursion, but they don't make it a way of life like I did. But I had to realize, me running the show, I'm sitting in my apartment, 30 years of age, drinking around the clock, against my own will, and I'm finished, and I know it. And all my scorecards read 0. So I thought to myself, what have I got to lose? And he says, Paul, get down on your knees and say a prayer, and I'm coming over to your house. And I got down on my knees for the first time in probably 20 years with any degree of authenticity. I used to come out with this sort of stuff. Oh, you want to see God? He never came down our street very often, I thought that was real slick and cool, But I tell you something. Thank God he didn't keep me waiting as long as I kept him. Because I got down on my knees that morning, a hopeless drunkard who couldn't stop drinking of his own volition, and I haven't taken a drink since. And the longest I ever was off drink by myself was 6 weeks. And it wasn't even off drink. I was either thinking about a drink, drinking a drink, or coming off a drunk. Booze consumed me. And I got down on my knees that morning, a thought came into my head, what have you got to lose? And I got down on my knees and I cried out. It was a hot August morning, but it might as well have been a cry in the dark. And I cried out, if there's anything out there, please help me. And I felt like someone walked up behind me and took a great weight off my shoulders. And a sense of peace came over me that I've never experienced before or since. And I started to worry and fret, and this other feeling kept suppressing it. That I'm sitting on the floor totally at peace. And this thought came into my head, you don't have to drink again if you don't want to. And right after that, Jerry came to the door, and I told him what I just told you. He says, Paul, you have a spiritual experience. It'll get you sober, but it won't keep you sober. We got to get you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was too sick to go then, but 4 days later, I was able to go to my first meeting. And walking through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous is the greatest singular thing that I've ever done in my life. Because unbeknownst to myself, I was moving from the problem to the solution. We do together what I can't do alone. But I made my next big mistake. See, I have this misconception that I thought that, looking back on it, that me and the disease, the first night outside my first meeting, we would have like a Treaty of Versailles moment. Okay, I'm going to go in here and go to these meetings, and you're going to go away and leave me alone. No, that didn't happen. That disease walked right in. It's been sitting here at every meeting I've been at. It's heard everything I've heard. You don't need to listen to her. We listen to him. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. And I'm sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and here's my big problem. Because of pride and ego and intellectual pride, I'm telling myself, my problem's alcohol. See, I'm thinking to myself, I had tried to put the plug in the jug myself before I came to AA. Now I'm sitting in AA and I'm thinking to myself, now we all have plugs in the jug, and if nobody moves, we'll be all right. But people are moving. They're moving down the road of recovery. I'm like, where are you going? We're going this way. And I'm sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, dying from untreated alcoholism. I'm like this thing tonight. I'm like a starving man at a spiritual banquet. There's all this food here. Come on ahead, Paul. Take as much as you want. There's an abundance. And I'm over here in bread and water, trying to stay sober on the first half of the first step. See, alcohol is only mentioned in the first half of the first step. The other 11 and a half steps are designed for me to do something I couldn't do, drunk or sober, and that's live out there in the real world. A world that I perceive as rude, crude, indifferent, spiritually unjust, and they're all out to get me. I don't know who they are. I can never fully quantify or qualify who they were, but they're out there and they're going to get me. That's all I know. And that makes for tough living, even in AA. Finally, a guy says to me, Paul, you know something? You've been tiptoeing around here, real slick, trying to, he says, when you think about it, you can get so far on osmosis in AA. People, places, and things will bring you so far, but it's unjust and unspiritual almost to ask them to bring you all the way. And I've tried to do that myself, being naive, put guys on my back and try to carry them up and down the steps. I almost got drunk. Guy said to me, Paul, you know what? This program's not for people that need it. It's not even for people that want it. It's for people that do it. See, I was a wanter. Oh, I want what he has. Well, you better find out what he's doing. And then Verdi was the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no free lunches in here. I got through the door and a gift. Everything else I got to work for. And I thought I was work. I thought I was doing what I needed to be doing. It's like the three legacies of Alcoholics Anonymous: unity, service, and recovery. And if somebody had approached me, I got unity. I understand the we part of the first step. I understand that many meetings make it easy, few make it hard, and none make it impossible. I've been to 1,000 meetings in 2.5 years. And somebody could have said, well, that's probably one of the reasons you're still sober today. Congratulations. How about service? Whoa, I got service. I'm making more coffee than Juan Valdez. You want to see service? I'm in service. And they're going to say, well, that's one of the reasons maybe you're still sober today. But how about door number 3? Recovery. Zippo. Nothing. Says Paul, we don't do this stuff because they're nice. We do them because they're necessary for recovery. If you want to get physically, mentally, and spiritually and emotionally rehabilitated, you've got to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. You've got to accept the fact that you suffer from alcoholism. And booze is not just your problem. And if booze is not just your problem, it's going to take more than not drinking booze to fix you. You've got to take care of everything. That's just why this disease is so cunning, baffling, and powerful. We hear it all the time. Roland Hazard, talk about a man. He spent a year with a psychoanalyst, Carl Jung. He didn't even make it out of Europe. He got drunk in Paris. Went back and Carl Jung wouldn't even take him. I knew one guy in particular spent months in a monastery in Ireland. He was drunk within a week of getting back to New York. Doctors. That's what does with alcoholics. You see, the doctor looks for the physical manifestation. The therapist looks for the causes. The psychiatrist looks for the effects. The clergyman looks for the lack of religious conviction. And the alcoholic dies drunk because nobody can get him sober, only another alcoholic. And that's been my experience. And I had to swallow some hard chunks of truth about myself. That if I wanted to get sober and stay sober. And I was dumb, but I wasn't stupid. I knew to go forward was to go to something. Not to go forward was to backslide to nothing, which is drinking. Half measures do avail you nothing. You don't put 50% in and get 50% out. You put 50% in, like me, you get drunk. It's got to be all in poker. Everything in. And that's what I did. And I got a guy, and I got into the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because really what I wanted, I'll tell you what I wanted. I wanted to be free. I hear people talking about freedom. And I wanted free. Because see, I couldn't get me off of me. I'm sitting in here wearing alcoholism like a cloak. It's just sucking the life out of me. I'm sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous with 2 hefty bags full of garbage. I'm carrying stuff around from the schoolyard. And I'm trying to justify it and rationalize it and defend it. And I say, Paul, you can't live that way. You've got to get free. Let go absolutely of all your old ideas. Get free of the only person you've got to get free from, you. Learn to live in the one place you could never live, right here, right now. See, I was a fearful person. And a fearful person will always find something to be afraid of. In the forest of life, there was a bogeyman behind every tree. I was full of guilt and sheer remorse of the past. I was full of fear of the future, which makes for difficult living in the present. I was everywhere but where I was meant to be. Right here, right now. Is God in tomorrow? Absolutely. Is He in yesterday? No doubt. But where do I realize His presence the most? Right here, right now. And I couldn't live right here, right now, because I got so much stuff. It's like Sobriety is like a house. And over the years, I boarded the house up, one resentment at a time. To the very end, I'm sitting here, and there's no sunlight of the Spirit getting in. It talks about in our book to come round, from the icy side of the mountain into the sunlight of the Spirit. And I would sit here and I go, I want God. And people say to me, do you want God in your life? Oh, yes, I want God. I want God on an all-time basis. I certainly do. I really do. And they say, well, you've got to get rid of the stuff that's blocking God from getting into your life. God wants to have a relationship. We talk about that. If you draw yourself closer, more will be revealed. Paul, you can't draw yourself any closer, and he can't draw himself any closer to you because you got all this stuff. And you got to get rid of that stuff so that he can get in. Like, how do you know me? If you hang around with me and get close to me, you'll get to know me. And it's the same with the spiritual part of this program. And I couldn't fully get that because I got all this stuff. So I realized I got to do this program. All the 12 steps. And my sponsor says to me, okay, Paul, you're going to do the 4th step. And I fought this 4th step for so long. And then I finally said, okay, I'm going to do the 4th step. And I'm thinking to myself, they want me to do a 4th step? I'm going to do the best 4th step that anybody's ever done in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. Typical alcoholic. I'm going to do a 4th step that people are going to be standing around the coffee pot talking about it. Did you see that 4th step? I didn't see it, but I heard about it. Was it really that good? Oh, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. It had everything. Old resentments, new resentments, residual resentments, harms, fears, things you're afraid of, things I'm afraid of, things that we're all afraid of. It was a work of art, I wanted newcomers to come up to me at meetings and go, are you the guy that wrote that 4th step that everybody's talking about? And I'd be like, why, yes I am, and yes I did. And it didn't really take that long either. So I could complicate with a brown paper bag. And my sponsor knew this about me. He says, Paul, I want you to do me a favor. The big book of, it's like driving to Florida. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous will tell you exactly how to get there. It'll give you explicit directions. You can't go wrong. The 12 by 12, think of it as a spiritual guidebook. It'll tell you what you might see along the way. And do me a favor, Paul. Stick to the black parts on the page. Because I have a habit of reading between the lines, seeing things, typical alcoholic, seeing things that aren't there, And I'm thinking to myself, he's been sober a long time. Things have changed. I got modern defects of character. He's like sober since caveman times, So I think to myself, I'll get the 12 and 12 in the big book especially, and I get a few 4th step guides. Oh my God. I mean, we have no opinion outside issues, but I had every 4th step guide that's ever been printed. I had 4th step guides for men, 4th step guides for Irish men who lived just outside Belfast. I had every 4th step guide, there was. I had it, and I just got completely confused. And then I'm at a meeting one night, and I hear this guy saying, and my sponsor's going to me, how's that 4th step coming? Oh, it's coming. Oh, it's coming. You better take a day off work. It's going to blow you away. I'm telling you. I've got everything's in the hopper. We're moving along. Things are happening. I can't really talk about it right now. I got to go. My sponsor said to me in the car park, I said at the meeting, you have no idea where you're going, but you're in a hurry to get there. But so I just got totally confused. And then I'm at a meeting one night, and I hear this old timer get up there, and he says the 4th step takes as long as it takes in one night. I said to myself, oh my God. And I got down, I said, and I put stuff down on paper. I like what Joe Martin says. It's not really logical. It's pure pragmatism, the program, as long as being spiritual. I wrote the stuff down in 4 and I talked about it in 5. I wrote stuff down in 6 and I talked about it in 7. I wrote stuff down in 8 and I talked about it in 9. I got free. I dropped those 2 hefty bags full of garbage. And I tried to find a spiritual basis for living in those last 3 steps. And thank God they say we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Because perfection for me is a hope and a dream and illusion that'll get me drunk. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying underachievement is a virtue worth striving for. But that program taught me to do things I couldn't do. As I said, live out there in the real world. Face, tolerate, endure, bear discomfort in order to gain comfort. Take on long-term goals and chip away at them, albeit a day at a time. Whether it be physical sobriety, good mental health, emotional balance, or a spiritual basis for living. I was just sort of a guy, if you can't do it in 20 minutes and you can't do it perfect, what's the point in doing it? You know, I strive for averageness today, you know, and those 3 steps. And I got free, as I said, from the only person I could never get free from, which is me. And this program gave me so much more. As I said, alcohol is only mentioned the first half of the first step. I have a rhythm in my life today. I have a meaning. I have a purpose. I'm not sitting in some bar half drunk saying to myself, how did this ever happen again? It was never meant to get this bad. You know, I've got used people with me on a journey. We do together what I can't do alone, and that's not drink one day at a time. I'm so glad that we read those traditions tonight, because those traditions tell me what I have to do. They pretty much sum up this whole program for me. As Dr. Bob did in 1950, when it's been said that he gave that 3-minute talk, almost like a Gettysburg Address has been referred to. In 3 minutes he summed up everything an Alcoholics Anonymous is about, just as Abraham Lincoln did in 280 words about the Civil War. And he summed it all up. He says, you know what, love and service. And if we could put this whole thing in some sort of a refiner's fire, or if you excuse the pun, distill it all down, we would come up with those 2 words, love and service. Unconditional love, not only for the people in AA, but the people outside AA. And service, can I help you? So I'm the sort of a guy, I'll help you. I'll help you get well if you show me you already are, you know. I'm reading one time the conversion of St. Francis. That's what I love. They said in the old South Bronx script, they used to say, we don't give up on anybody. I remember hearing that. I said to myself, what a simplistic spiritual statement. We don't give up on anybody. And that's what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, in the conversion of St. Francis, he walked out of the town and he seen a leper at the side of the road. And he kept walking. And he stopped. Thought better of it and turned round. Went back and gave the guy a hug. At a time when leprosy was like. And he walked on. He looked over his shoulder again. And the leper was gone. And he said till his dying day that he believed it was God himself. And that's how I have to remember. And that's where I found God. I found God in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's where, see, I want to see some big neon light. Here, Paul, I'm over here. You know, some burning bush. You know, some universal message. I found God in the trembling hand of a newcomer. I found God in the bottom of a coffee pot. I found God in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. They told me, if you can't believe what you don't see, Paul, believe what you can see. And I could see people sober, and they were happy, and they were effective, and they were getting on with their lives. And I said, I want what they have. I said, well, you better do what they did. You know, and that's what I'm saying. If I live 3 lifetimes, I can't pay back what Alcoholics Anonymous done for me. You know, and hard is today. I mean, hard was what happened and is today. I mean, life's not easy. I had this misconception when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Now that I'm not drinking, I'll just walk between the raindrops, and every day I'll be 75 and sunny. There's been things that have happened to me far more traumatic in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous than ever happened out there drinking. And how do I do it? The old-timers told me how to do it. You'll do it one day at a time, Paul. It's like when I went back to school. I said to my sponsor, I can't go back to school. The gifts that this program has given me, I was 32 years of age. I didn't even have a high school diploma. And all the shame and disgrace and the self-loathing that goes with that. And I signed up for college, and I said to my sponsor, I can't do it. He says, you can do it. I said, how am I going to do it? He says, you're going to do it how we do it. How do we do things around here, Paul? We do them one day at a time. What if I fail a class? So what? You'll take it again. Nothing beats a failure but a try. And that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. We keep trying. And that's what I did. I said, what if they throw me out? The day they throw you out, you call me. And that day never came. He was standing next to me when I threw my hat in the air. Typical alcoholic. I said, this is great. I went and got another degree. And then I got a master's degree. And then I got a second master's degree. And my sponsor always keeps me humble. He says, every time I think I'm an above the herd intellectual, he says, Paul, a thermometer's got 100 degrees. And you know what nurses do with those, don't you? So AA always, they told me in AA, it's okay to have your head in the clouds as long as your feet's on the ground, Paul, And as I said, before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, like Oscar Wilde, I knew the price of everything and the value of nothing. I got things of real value here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got used people here together. The service, the service of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if Bill Wilson said on his deathbed, on the day he got sober, he had this vision it could have been his deathbed, of a chain of drunks around the world. And that's what I am. That's what I do in my program. I ask, that's my maintenance program. God, make my link strong. Make it strong to the people coming behind me. Make it strong to the people walking ahead of me. So if someone can say to me, Paul, take me on that journey, I can say, yes, please. As we walk side by side. Take me on that journey. Take me to that place that you speak about of peace and happiness and serenity. Take me to that place where I no longer regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I can say, yeah, take this journey with me. This fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, that's why those traditions are so important. I want them to be here for my children, my grandchildren. As far as I'm concerned, this is a miracle, not only the 20th century, but all 20th centuries. Because you think about it, what have we just hit here? We've all just hit a lucky streak. We all just got sober. No. Because right now, there's somebody spending their Friday night a lot different than the way we're spending ours. And they're sitting as we were, drinking around the clock against their own will. I used to get into that we're the chosen ones. Like spiritual elitism. I don't believe that today. Not the God that I have come to know and love in Alcoholics Anonymous. If sobriety is a gift from God, then everybody's entitled to it. The grace of God is like the rain that falls on everyone. I just don't know when that drop of rain fell on my face. I had that moment of clarity and had that small extension of grace to ask God to come into my life. And the guy down the bar just wiped it away and drank himself to death. I don't know. But I know what I'm meant to do here. The highest pay grade in Alcoholics Anonymous is servant. I got to give and give and give. I see, I'm the sort of guy, I like to give till I feel warm and fuzzy. I got to give till it hurts over and over and over again. Why? Because I'm the problem. I've always been the problem. I'm a taker all my life. Always have been. I'll think about me 4 times before you'll even enter the equation. My wife catches me all the time, even to this day. She'll be telling me some problem as it relates to her, and I'll glaze over. And she'll go, you're thinking how this is going to affect you, right? I'm like, no, I'm not, but I am, I used to try to cop out in that stuff. Oh, it's DNA. It's not DNA. It's not unavoidable or uncontrollable. But it's so ingrained in me as an alcoholic. See, my holy trinity was me, me, me. It's all about me. I got to break the shackle, the bondage of self. The handcuffs of alcohol have been taken off, the bondage of self. And how do I do that? Helping others over and over. Because when I'm helping you, I'm not thinking about me. And those old timers that I met from the South Bronx, they set that bar really high of helping others. And today in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've got a good life. As I said, things happen in AA. A friend of mine says, the same things that happen to people out there happen to people in here. And maybe we're a little more fortunate that we've got a program that helps us get through life one day at a time. I had a year there recently, couldn't believe it. 15 years sober, lying in bed, heart attack. Now I would like to tell you that the first person who showed up was spiritual Paul, but unfortunately alcoholic Paul got there just a little bit ahead of him. I'm like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You've been stroking me all these years. We're just waiting for it. Now you're like, really going to give it to me. I knew it was serious. They rushed me to the hospital. They brought me to the local hospital in Rocco, and they go, no, take him right to Long Island Jewish. They got a 24-hour team on standby. So I knew it was serious. I get into the hospital, and they said, is that your wife? I said, yeah, okay. We see you got a cross around your neck. Are you a Catholic? I'm like, well, is it better if I'm Jewish? Typical alcoholic. Let me keep all my options open. You never know. The doctor walks in. I'm like, Shalom. Oy vey, can you believe this is happening to me? You ever heard an Jewish Irish guy, you know? And I'm lying there and I'm worrying and fretting. It was like God finally stepped in and said, enough already. I'm taking over. And a sense of peace came over me. And they got me out of hospital. And a short time later, I'm back in hospital again. They realized I got some problem that I've had since I was a baby. And they brought me back into the room again. And they were going to put a pacemaker in. I ended up flatlining. I'm dead for a couple of minutes. And I knew I was dead. I knew I was dead as well as I'm standing here right now. Next thing you know, I'm floating and I'm like, this is not good. Next thing I'm back in Ireland. Honest to God, I'm walking down the street of my hometown. It's a beautiful summer's day. An azure sky. Thinking later, I said, maybe that's my idea of heaven, a cloudless day in Ireland, you know, who knows? Very rare, you know, it has to be heaven, right? But I got a 3-year-old at home that I love more than life itself. I says, God, please, I got work to do. Please let me go back. I want to see that little girl grow up. I want to see that little girl get married. The next thing I'm floating, bang, I'm back in my body again. All these nurses around me. He's back online. They give us a bit of a scare there, Paul. Anyway, and once again, me feeling sorry for myself. But the hand of God was there the whole time. If that had happened anywhere else except 6 feet from an OR door, there'd be somebody else standing here tonight. It wouldn't be me. And they put the stuff in and got me sorted out. And the reason I'm telling you this is because everything in Alcoholics Anonymous is a day at a time. Because these nurses came to visit me and they went, you know, we're veteran nurses and we've been around this hospital a long time working in the OR. We heard you had a, near death. Did you cross over? Did you go to the other side? I said, well, I went to Ireland. We used to call it the other side, but I don't know if that's the other side you're referring to, you know. And they said, the reason I'm telling this, we know people that this have happened to, and they've come back and told us that it was a defining moment in their life. One of those seminal moments. I'm saying to my wife, my wife's the brains of the outfit. I'm saying to my wife, you know what? That's going to be me. I'm going to make this change me. I'm not going to sweat the small stuff anymore. I'm not going to get annoyed in the supermarket. I'm not going to get annoyed in traffic. I'm going to see things differently. My wife's like, yeah, okay, we'll see. And sure enough, for the first few weeks that I came out of hospital, I was like the Dalai Lama of New York. I mean, seriously. Somebody had cut me off. I was like, peace be with you. God made a big world. There's room for the both of us. I'm in no hurry. I'm in eternity, Then you miss a few meetings. You don't talk to your sponsor and somebody cuts you off in Queens, the next thing you know, you're in Riverhead, And they're like, what happened to spiritual Paul? That's what I'm saying. This thing is so tenuous. And that's the way it has to be, one day at a time. The time that I think I've got this in my back pocket, good to go, is the day I'm getting ready to get drunk again. I said, we do together what I can't do alone. And I like to sum up the power of Alcoholics Anonymous in a little story that's very close to my heart, because it involves two things that is very near and dear to me, and that's Ireland and Alcoholics Anonymous. And maybe you've heard me tell this before. But in 1946, there was no Alcoholics Anonymous in Ireland. And there's ever a country that needed AA, it was Ireland, right? And there's a guy, a policeman from Philadelphia. His name was Conor Flynn. Now, he'd been born in Ireland, but he spent most of his life working as a policeman in Philadelphia. And he retired. And he went back to Ireland on a vacation. And he realized he had 2 years sobriety. And he realized there was no meetings of AA in Ireland. And he sent a letter to New York. And they said, well, we'll send you a startup package. And they sent him a package. And he, much like Bill Wilson 10 or 11 years earlier, he walked the streets of Dublin trying to find someone to get a meeting started. He put ads in newspaper. It was getting nowhere. He was ready to give up. Finally went into a hospital. He met a doctor. And this doctor had been like Dr. Silkworth 11 years earlier, treating alcoholics and never seen anybody get sober. And the guy told him, he said about AA, and the doctor says, I'd never heard of AA. But we got a guy down in one of those rooms. He's been detoxed 30 or 40 times. There's sometimes he's drunk on the way home from the hospital. If you can make an impression on him, I'll give you the full support of this hospital. So Conor Flynn went down. The guy lying in the bed was called Richard Percival from Dungannon. And he did what I try to do here tonight. Share experience, strength and hope. How he got drunk, how he got sober, and how the man in the bed might get sober. Now Richard Percival had heard it all before from many people, but he knew something was different this time. This man was talking his language. And Richard Percival got out of his bed and never took another drink to the day he died in 1971. And those two men started AA in Ireland. That's the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the power of one alcoholic working with another. I need you, and you need me, and that's okay by me. You know? And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping me stay sober here tonight. You know, and if you're just coming new to Alcoholics Anonymous, please stay here, because there's nothing out there for you, only pain, trouble, and misery. Because I've been there before. I drift on a sea of booze. No moral compass, no spiritual moorings. If there was any coordinates, it was pain and misery. And it wasn't a glacial drift. I was moving at a fast clip to nothingness and nowhere. Went all the way to the precipice. And God put his hand on my shoulder and says, no, you're not going over the edge. I'm probably to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the ability to live 2 lives in one lifetime because of AA. People say, oh, I got my life back in AA. I don't want my life back. It sucked. You can keep it. I got a whole brand new life in AA. Here you go, Paul. Here's a brand new page, a brand new pencil. Are there people in my life today that were there with drunk and I was drinking? Absolutely. But it's a different relationship today. Everything before was built on sand, and one drink came along and washed it all away. Today, because of you people and the fellowship and the program, my house is on concrete today. And I thank you for that. And that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.